Hi, I'm Gareth Kane. This short video is to introduce my new book, Accelerating Sustainability Using the 80-20 Rule. And this book is born out of frustration. Frustration that we're making such slow progress in tackling these huge existential environmental issues like climate change, resource depletion, water stress, etc., etc. Frustration that so many well-meaning people are wasting their energy pursuing quite trivial outcomes rather than tackling the big problems or finding out what works. And frustration that we'd rather wrap people in red tape than free their creativity to solve these problems. And I want to bring a really powerful weapon to this fight, and it's known as the 80-20 rule. And the 80-20 rule says that in many cases 20% of inputs to anything result in 80% of outcomes. Likewise, 80%, the vast bulk of whatever you put into a system, results in just 20% of outcomes. And we can see this in sustainability. For example, in a standard petrol-driven car, 80% of the emissions are down to a single factor, and that's the efficiency of driving the car in use. Likewise, if you look at clothes washing powders, traditional technology, 75% of cradle-to-grave emissions, 75% are down to a single factor, and that's heating the water to wash the clothes. So if you can reduce that water temperature, you'll make the biggest impact. And if you want to go to a global scale, it's said that 2/3 of global emissions, 2/3, are down to just 90 companies. You know, it's really quite extraordinary, these imbalances that you find. And you can use this to focus your efforts on what really matters. I'll give you an example. Over the summer, when I was writing the book, I had a meeting with representatives of a major construction company. And they told me their biggest single challenge was to engage all their frontline workers who were constructing the buildings. Because they're spread across the country, they are on a whole variety of contracts and subcontracts, and very few of them have access to IT. So most of the traditional routes of employee engagement are closed. So at first I was absolutely stumped with this one. You know, I just said to them, hey, this is one of the biggest challenges I've ever come across. This is a very, very difficult thing to do. So in slight panic, I asked them to step back and said, how big a problem is it? What impact in terms of your company does this site work represent? And they were straight back at me like that. They're very good on their data. Wham back, 10%. 90%, they said proudly, is determined by the designers and how they design the buildings. So, I said, instead of trying to tackle a very difficult audience who are only responsible for 10% of emissions, why don't we instead look at engaging the very small number of designers who all sit in one office who are responsible for 90% of emissions? There was a sudden silence as the penny dropped. And then the biggest emotion was relief, because they had thought that this was a really difficult, important challenge, and it turned out to be a really difficult but not very important challenge, engaging the frontline staff. And we refocused our efforts for the rest of the conversation. And that's just one example of where you can use 80-20 type thinking to really revolutionize the way you tackle sustainability in your organization. So if you've got that same frustration that I was talking about at the start of the clip, then you've really got to read this book. It will absolutely throw open the whole field of sustainability. It'll free your mind, you'll feel a lot more creative and a lot more empowered to take the actions that will really result in substantial step changes in the sustainability performance of your organisation.